All right, welcome everyone. Welcome to AI Summer 2026. Thank you so much for joining us. I'll take a minute or so more as people are still trickling in. Um, but yeah. All right, we have a good collection of people. We'll go ahead and get started. Hello, everyone. My name is Umang Chaudhary. I'm Senior Data Scientist at the DSI. I'm joined here by Miranda Shirk, who's also Senior Data Scientist at the DSI, and soon will be joining us Dr. Jesse Spencer Smith, who's the Chief Data Scientist at the DSI. If this is your second or third time at AI Summer, welcome back. But if this is the first time you're joining us for AI Summer, welcome. And just to kind of give you a little bit of a rundown of the logistics of what this month or so will look like. So we're going to be meeting every Tuesday and Thursday. Um, at this time, we will have an hour of office hours after every session. So if you have any questions, feel free to hang back. We'll be here to answer questions. We also do have AI Fridays every Friday from 10 to noon. So if you do have questions outside of these hours and you're just working on something that you would need some assistance with, we'll be available over Zoom this entire summer, every Friday from 10 to noon. Um, if you've attended AI Summer before, we're going to be doing things a little bit differently this year. So in the first 2 weeks, we'll focus on instruction a little bit. We'll try and get you up to speed with respect to AI and all things AI as they stand currently. And the next 2 weeks we'll use to kind of actually spend some time hands-on building tools, and we'll be there to kind of support you through your time as you work in cohorts, and we'll split you all off into different sections so that you're working with people with very similar goals in mind, so you can kind of learn off of each other. Before we get started, are there any general questions about, AI Summer, any of the logistics, any questions from the emails we'd sent earlier this week, anything at all? And absolutely feel free to unmute, interrupt me if you have any questions during this session. I'm happy to kind of keep this as interactive as possible. Great. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to share the repository for AI Summer. This is where we will be putting all of our resources for this summer. They'll be in the Zoom chat, and we'll also share an email with this information later today. But so as Jesse mentioned in his email earlier this week, a lot of what we're going to be doing during AI Summer this year is focusing on using Claude Code, and Claude Cowork and the tools that come with it. And we'll be using Claude primarily as sort of the tool of choice for this program. But do note that most of what we're going to be covering is available through other providers. So if, Codex provided by OpenAI is your sort of platform of choice, most of what we're going to be talking about translates really well to these other providers as well. So if you don't have Claude, or if you're following along with Cowork, with Codex, you should be able to keep up pretty well. But since we're going to be spending so much time this summer actually building tools and giving you time to really use what we've learned, I think the biggest thing to really think about is when it comes to AI, one thing that we tend to talk not so much about is security, data security specifically. So we're going to start off our session this AI summer by talking about using AI in a practical and secure way. So, um, to start, we'll talk a little bit about working with secure data. So if you're working with any type of data that might be, unpublished research, documents that are protected by some sort of an NDA, we'll talk a little bit about how to use AI when working with that type of data. We'll talk a little bit about how you can kind of move your AI workflows completely locally. So if you do have, data that you're working with that requires some sort of privacy, you can actually take all of your work offline and do it in a secure fashion. And then once we've covered the basics of security and we know how to use the data with AI, then we'll start talking about Claude Cowork, and Claude Code, for which Jesse will step in. So, quickly before I get into it, these are some optional downloads for working locally. So if you do plan on working with data that is to some extent private, and I'll talk about what private really means. LM Studio is a great application that you can download. It's available on Mac, Windows, and Linux that allows you to download models, open source models to your computer and just run them entirely on device, which makes it a very, very secure solution. If you are still looking for the power that comes with something like Claude Code, the agentic system that allows you to spin up multiple agents, write code within your own working directory, all of that good stuff. A good alternative would be Open Code. This is also something that you can download, is available in Mac and Windows, I believe, and is a really good alternative to using Claude Code if you are working in that sort of private setting and you don't have I guess, agreements with Anthropic that would allow you to work in that kind of setting. And I'll show you LM Studio specifically in action at the end of this quick session. So, why do we need to worry about security when it comes to AI? So, by default, as you might have noticed, conversations with ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, or most of the LLM providers out there through an online service may be used for future training. So, your conversations are up for grabs, which can be a problem sometimes. The other issue is if you are, say, building custom tools, if you are using any of these chat models through the API, or embedding your documents into a way that you can use them with AI, they may also be used to train new models. So the API is also something that doesn't necessarily protect you from your data getting leaked out or being trained on. So when working with secure data, alternative approaches are required, and this could be in the form of enterprise contracts, completely moving locally and using open source models, or building custom solutions. And hopefully at the end of these 4 weeks, you'll be able to use at least one of these solutions to your advantage and implement your AI workflows. So I mentioned enterprise contracts. How do these work? So one thing to keep in mind is LLMs aren't always learning. They essentially collect data over a long period of time. They kind of collect these conversations that you have over time, and then say at the end of every month or two, OpenAI decides to grab all of your conversations and further train their models on that. Um, so one option to kind of avoid that is under certain paid plans and agreements, you can opt out of your data being used for training. Do note that you need to manually enable this. So if you just sign up for a paid plan on ChatGPT or Claude, it doesn't automatically opt you out of training. So if you go into your settings, you'll have an option where you can toggle opting out of training. So that's definitely something to keep in mind. But the other thing to note about this is that even though they're saying that they won't use your data for training, which is great, which does protect your data in most cases, US law now does require that all conversations with AI be saved by the providers. So while they may not use your data for training, it will be sitting on their servers indefinitely. So that's something to think about. So clearly we need to figure out, what's the right solution and how do we really classify data? So here is a data classification guideline provided by Vanderbilt. If you're not with Vanderbilt, your organization probably has something very similar. Most organizations have broken their data policy into these four sort of levels. So level one is public data. This is data that's intended for public release or distribution. These would be things like publicly available data sets or data that you just don't really care if it's used for training or just any other purposes. So you can use all sorts of AI solutions for that. Level two is institutional use only. This should be, data that's private to the institution, that's not typically available to others without permission. This could be unpublished research data, institutional documents, things that you would just generally not want to share out without some sort of guidelines. Level three is restricted. This is confidential by law or contract, should not be shared with unauthorized people. This is any data that's protected by NDAs, protected health information like PHI, HIPAA, FERPA, or any data protected by Europe's GDPR. And then level four is critical, which is confidential by law, requires bespoke security requirements. This could be, law enforcement records, classified information, anything that mostly if you're working on any project with the government, most of your data will fall into this category. And unfortunately, for pretty much anything in this category, you are going to require some type of custom solution. And we'll talk about what those look like at Vanderbilt. So, what are our AI solutions for each of these data classification levels? So, level one public use, you can use all embedding models through APIs, UIs, all chat models, all sorts of training solutions. So, if you were, fine-tuning your own large language model, you can do this locally. You can use OpenAI's fine-tuning API. Anything is up for grabs. Level two institutional use is when you need to start thinking about things a little bit more. So this again, I would say level two is the most varied in terms of preferences. Here you can really choose what data you might consider level two or level three. There's a little bit more flexibility here. But in most cases, opting out using these providers provided toggle usually meets the requirements for level two institutional use data. So, sign up for a basic paid plan with OpenAI, Anthropic, or Google, and opt out of training. That should cover you. Team accounts also, I've noticed that all team accounts from all of these providers by default do opt you out of training. So that's something that you can keep in mind. If your organization provides institutional access, like Vanderbilt does provide ChatGPT EDU, that is also safe for data up to level two. Um, if you do want to be a little bit more particular about, how your data is used and stored, you can obviously switch to open source models and just run them locally, or you can run them on, a server that you are sure will not necessarily misuse your data. As for data storage solutions, you could either store this type of data locally, or you could just store it on Acre at Vanderbilt or other approved storage solutions. If you're trying to build a RAG chatbot, and you need a vector store, again, you'll be using embeddings to convert your data into a vector store. So you want to think about, how those embedding models will use your data. So a paid plan API access embedding model would work, or I would suggest using a local embedding model. And then finally, if you're trying to do any sort of training, you can use most solutions for this, again, through a paid OpenAI plan where you've opted out, or a paid provider plan where you've opted out of training. You can train on your DGXs, Google Colab, pretty much any hardware would work for this case till your LLM provider is not using your data for training. Level three is where it gets a little bit trickier. So if you want to use some of the state-of-the-art models, which are closed source, like Claude Opus 3.7, GPT 5.5, these are typically only available to you through enterprise contracts at level three. So if you've used Vanderbilt's Amplify at Vanderbilt.ai, that is thankfully a solution that is appropriate for up to level three data. So that's a really, really great solution provided to us by Vanderbilt and the Amplify team. So on Amplify, you'll have access to most state-of-the-art models from Anthropic and OpenAI, but I do believe that they're planning on expanding the selection fairly soon. Again, if none of those options are suitable to your needs, you can always use open source models. Level 3 data typically is only stored on Acre or other private servers at Vanderbilt. Although when storing this kind of data, I would just make sure that Acre is aware that you are storing level 3 data on those specific folders. And again, local approved vector stores for RAG would work, and training really gets limited to just on your own hardware, pretty much that you've either purchased through Acre or you have your own private servers. And finally, level four critical data. Not only do you need to use custom solutions when it comes to the LLM providers, but you are also going to require custom data solutions. So Acre by default, again, does not protect level four data. So if you do have level four data, you want to reach out to Acre and figure out, a solution that will meet all the requirements of level four data. Any questions about that? Let me check my chat real quick. Uh, yes, thank you, Maxwell, for that note in the chat. So we're going to be talking a lot about Claude, Cowork, Claude Code. How does that all fit into this framework? The standard unpaid plan is only great for level one data. The standard paid plan with opt-out is good for level 2 or level 3. You need to check with your institution. Current agreements at Vanderbilt with Anthropic allow the use of level 2 with Claude, Cowork, or Claude Code. But Vanderbilt AI does give you access to Anthropic models like Opus 3.5 or 3.7 with level 3 access. So it doesn't necessarily give you the framework that Claude Cowork and Claude Code give you, but it does give you access to those same chat models, which can be really helpful. If you're working with more secure data, there are several alternatives to Claude Code that mimic this sort of multi-agent and system-aware capabilities of Claude Code. One good alternative would be Open Code, and I put the link right here so you can go check that out. And this allows the use of models that you can download locally on your own machine, and then they have provided a sort of scaffolding around that model that allows you to spin up multiple agents and do all the kinds of things that Claude Code allows you to do. But level 4 data, you're going to need a custom solution that fits your needs. But instruction in week 2 from Miranda will give you the tools necessary to build some of the simpler agentic workflows. But essentially, once you have those simple agentic workflows in your tool belt, you'll be able to build something as effective as a Claude Code. Questions about any of that so far? Great. So thinking about, some of the more custom solutions that you do need, you need to think a little bit about what are the limitations when it comes to working locally. As I mentioned, most open source LLMs that you can run locally are not as good as state-of-the-art models like GPT 5.5 or Claude 3.7, and proprietary models are almost never available to run locally. So even through the enterprise contracts that we have, um, those models aren't running on Vanderbilt hardware. They're still running on Microsoft servers somewhere, so your data is going, over the air, which is why those solutions will never be appropriate for level 4 data, or even in some cases, level 3 data. So solution, go completely local, right? But the main choke point there is your hardware. Running or training large parameter models requires sometimes full GPU nodes, if not multiple racks. So if you wanted to, locally run the equivalent of a Claude 3.7, you're going to need a couple of racks of GPUs, which can be very, very inaccessible and expensive. So the solution there is to, one, either use smaller parameter fine-tuned models, which now tend to work really, really well, use distilled versions of larger models. And if you're not aware, distillation is essentially a technique in with large language models, which is a knowledge transfer technique where essentially a smaller model is a smaller, more efficient model learns from a larger model's outputs. And so this process allows allows you to compress the knowledge of the larger model into a smaller one while maintaining the performance. You could also use larger models with lower quantization, and quantization essentially is a technique used to reduce the memory footprint and the computational cost of running large-scale neural networks by essentially taking the numerical weights and activations of these LLMs, converting them from high precision numerical formats to lower precision numerical formats. For example, taking a 32-bit floating point and converting that into an 8-bit integer that reduces your memory footprint by a lot. Good thing is you don't need to do this on your own. For almost all open source LLMs, there is a quantized version available to you for free, so you can just download those instead, and they will fit in your machine much easier. One couple of benefits of quantization is, of course, it reduces the model size, so it sits on your computer easily. It also speeds up inference, it lowers the latency, and it reduces energy consumption, which is definitely something to keep in mind as you're starting to work with larger and larger models. And then if you are doing some sort of training can be really, really expensive, even for smaller models. So if you are limited by your hardware, you can use techniques like parameter efficient fine tuning for training. If you if you're less aware of how parameter efficient fine tuning or any of these techniques work, I recommend that you go to our repository. We have an archive folder on our repository from AI Summer 2025, where we do go into the details of how these techniques work. We won't be covering those in as much detail this AI Summer. This AI Summer is more focused on using agentic tools like Claude Cowork and Claude Code, and building your own agentic tools, not so much focused on training or fine tuning. So if you're interested in the training and fine tuning stuff, all of our recordings from last summer are available online, and the materials are available um, as well on our on our GitHub repository. Any questions about any of this so far? Great. So I'll quickly pivot to a very useful solution called LM Studio that allows you to use models locally before we jump into a quick break, unless Jesse joins us early. A quick break before we jump into Claude Code and Cowork and look at all those um, tools. So let me share my screen. All right, you should be seeing a uh, Miranda, do you see the LM Studio window here? Perfect. Awesome. So this is what LM Studio looks like the first time you open it. It will likely not have this chat or anything. Let me see if I can close out of this. Right, so this is what LM Studio will look like the first time you download it. There's nothing much going on, but one thing that I want to point to is this little model search button on the left side. And this will give you access to all the open source models that are out there. Most providers put their open source models on a website called Hugging Face. And Hugging Face is a great place for you to share models that you fine-tuned, but most providers put their state-of-the-art open source models on Hugging Face for you to download and run locally. So you can see Gemma 4 is here with all the sorts of configurations, whether it's a smaller parameter version of it or a large parameter version. You'll also notice here if they are in the top searches. Let me see. Um, I don't see them here, but typically you'll see a quantized version next to some of these models. So it'll be Gemma 431B quantized, and there'll be essentially a quantized version of the model that will be able to sit on your computer. But the good thing is LM Studio tells you what will sit on your computer and what won't. I have an M3 MacBook Pro with 48 gigabytes of RAM, so I can fit some pretty decently sized models. So here I have Gemma 4 31 billion parameter model. It's about a 20 gigabyte model. Oh, here you can see the quantization format. So here you can actually see there's an 8-bit quantized model, there's a 6-bit quantized model, and there's a 4-bit quantized model, which is the smallest. So you can see there's a pretty drastic difference as you increase the quantization on all of these models. But I've already downloaded this 4-bit 31 billion parameter Gemma model. So you can download this locally to your computer. You can come up here to chat, and then you can start a new chat, and it has already preloaded. Has it? No, it has not. So you can click up here and select a model to load. And the good thing is if you're very interested in, modifying the way this model works, you want to mess around with the parameters and mess around with its context lengths, figure out how much of it should live on your GPU versus how much of it on your CPU. It gives you all of those options in a very non-code way. So typically you'd have to do this in code, but this is a very easy way to change all those settings of these models so that they best fit your needs. I'm not going to change anything here. For the most part, these settings tend to be set for the best performance on your machine. So I'm going to go ahead and load this model. It's going to take a couple of seconds, but it will work just like any other chat model that you would use on ChatGPT or Claude. But let's take a look. Did this load? Yep, this loaded. So I can just say something like, tell me something about Nashville. Um, and it should run fairly quickly. This is a thinking model, so we can also actually see its train of thought. So I can see provide a comprehensive overview. It's deciding what to tell me and then it'll put together a response soon after. One thing to keep in mind, if you are trying to do things that are more agentic in fashion, or you want your tool, or you want your LLM to be able to use certain types of tools, say, connect to the National Weather Service API and tell me the latest weather updates. Most of these models can do that, but these models need to be trained on tool usage in order for them to be used. So just keep in mind, if you are trying to get a model to do certain types of things, the model needs to know how to do those types of things. So I know Gemma 4 can do some of those things, so it's a good fit for me. But if you go to Hugging Face and check out the descriptions of all of these models, you'll be able to kind of figure out what the best solution is for the task that you are trying to do. But as you can see, it works relatively well. It's a little bit slower than you would see on, say, ChatGPT or Claude, but that's also because this is using a little bit more than half my memory on my computer, and it's kind of my Mac is about to take off. I'm gonna have it stop here because it's using a little bit too much RAM, and I might get kicked off Zoom. But um, yes, Veronica, you have a question.
Yes, we're just wondering in the chat, should we have downloaded this LM Studio or put it on there? Because most of us just did the Claude with the
Yes,
Cowork.
completely optional. I just wanted to show this. You might realize, after looking at the data privacy levels, that perhaps Claude is not a solution that works for you because of how sensitive your data is. So this is a
Okay,
alternative if you should need it.
thank you.
And let me just read through
Yeah,
the.
there's also another question from Maxwell Lieb about model formats, if you want to address that.
Let me just read the question real quick. Um, yeah, model configurations do change a lot. I would not say it's necessarily a parlor trick. The one thing to keep in mind is that if you well, for the GPU offload things, the more of the model you put on your GPU, the faster it's going to be. It's not going to change the actual performance of it. But if you are playing around with some of the things like flash attention or some of the more complicated features that you did see when it comes to loading a model in here. Let me see if I can eject it.
Yeah, for a little context there, I'm a local host kind of maximalist working on a full, Strix Halo laptop. So a
Mhm.
lot of RAM dynamic loading between CPU and the APU, but
Mhm.
really just, some of these things to kind of squeeze the last little bit of performance out of it for a
Mhm.
device that's not an incredibly fast GPU, but has a tremendous amount of available VRAM. And
Right.
yeah, trying to, load larger models, but not have them crawl to a slow pace.
Yeah. So again, I think the only thing that you'll notice is a change in speed, not necessarily performance, unless you're here playing around with some of these other metrics. Like, if you were to change this quantization or change the flash attention or any of this stuff, that will change how the model, you know, acts, but the only main difference you'll notice between, throwing some of it on GPU versus CPU or whatever, that's really comes down to speed.
Is there any good resources for understanding the interplay between all of those configurations, or is it really kind of a matter of guess and check and maybe hope someone's published a paper about, using this one method or whatever?
I don't have a resource at the top of my mind. Miranda, do you know of any publications that go into the details of any of this?
There are some like stats websites, but it's more stats and not so much going into it's like benchmarks that other people post and
Right.
not
Okay.
so
I think
much like,
benchmarks is the
yeah.
sort of best solution.
Awesome. I'll go take a look. Thank you.
Cool. Awesome. Um, Great. Let me see. All right. Let me stop my share real quick. Okay, so Jesse will be joining us shortly. He is at a quick session at Nissan. So, I just give me 1 second. I'll go ahead and give us a quick whirlwind tour of the Claude app because this is something that you will see a lot over the next couple of weeks. So if you already have a paid Claude subscription, fantastic. This is probably what you're going to see. But this is what the Claude apps looks like. If you have a paid account, if you have an unpaid account, you're just going to see chat here. If you have a basic paid plan, it does not give you access to Cowork or Code. But if you have, I believe, a Pro plan, it does give you access to Cowork and Code. But generally, just wanted to quickly introduce some of these things. So there are three different things on here. There's chat, there's Cowork, and there's code. So the chat mode is, what you're typically used to. It's just a simple chat GPT window. It's fairly capable. It has access to the internet, so it can go do internet searches. It has access to tools, so it can go do some of that. But what it can't do is sort of work in a project like setting. It can't read your files. It can only read what you upload. So, you can upload a bunch of files and ask it to work through it, but it is essentially a session in isolation. It's not going to necessarily keep memory of what you're doing in one session to another session. Um, it will create a general memory. It'll try and understand your likes and dislikes over time if you have that setting on. I personally have that off because I kind of like my models to be as vanilla as possible. So I've turned that setting off where it learns from me. I think somewhere in here, yeah, you can give it instructions and all that kind of stuff. So those settings work well for, a simple chat window, but it doesn't really get into sort of a project-like setting. So that's where Cowork and Code come in. The good thing is, from a UI perspective, they look pretty much the same. The biggest difference here is in Cowork is you have the option to work in a project. So you can point it to a certain folder. So I can say point it to my desktop, and it will ask me, am I allowed to change files in your desktops? And I can say either always allow or allow. I'm just going to say allow for now. And then now I can point it to various files and folders that are living on my computer, and it'll be able to work with them. It'll be able to edit them. It'll be able to write to them. It'll be able to create new files. But the good thing is it'll ask for sort of permission every single time it tries to do something that could be, I guess, something that might break something. So if it tries to edit a file, it will ask you. If it tries to add a new file, it will ask you. If it tries to delete a file, it will definitely ask you. So it's pretty good about keeping track of that. And then we have Claude Code, which is very similar. Again, you can point it to a specific directory. But the main difference between Cowork and Code is that Cowork is sort of a small sandbox environment where essentially within the Claude app, it is spinning up an environment where it can run a little bit of code, where it can work with your files, but it is not a powerhouse. It is not necessarily using your compute that is on your machine. It is working within this virtual environment that it's set up within the Claude app. And so it's somewhat limited. It's still capable. I would say it's good to build, simple solutions. It's good for like analysis of documents or, analysis of multiple documents, but I would say it's not great at writing code. That's where Claude Code comes in. This is a lot more powerful. One thing to keep in mind in the Claude app, if you're using Claude Code, it is still a virtual environment. It is still working within a sandbox within the sort of in confines of the app itself. But it's a little bit more powerful than Cowork. It has access to a little bit more memory from your computer, and it is designed to write code. So it is designed for coding projects. It's designed to really keep in mind things like GitHub and version control, which is why here you can see, okay, it's working on the main branch, but I can switch it to something else. Those kinds of things you're not really going to see in Cowork. You can just point it to a model and it'll point it to a location in your computer and it'll work out of there. But it's not ideal for really coding-based projects where you want a version control. The other thing to keep in mind is in Cowork, all of these conversations are just sort of sitting in, again, that isolated Cowork chat. It's not organized in a project. The good thing about code is you point it to a folder, it starts kind of using that folder as like its own sort of hub for doing work. So you can see I've pointed it to this accessible housing folder. I've pointed it to a heat stress detection folder. These are projects that I've been working on, and I've had multiple conversations with Claude Code about this project. Each of these are doing something different, but a really great thing about this is that it's going to keep track of things that I did in one conversation versus another. So if I start talking about something that I did 2 weeks ago in this conversation, it's going to be aware about it, and it can kind of pick up where you left off a lot easier than Cowork. The one other thing to point out in the world of Claude and Cowork and Code is that there is a second, I guess there are two other ways of accessing Claude Code, which are a little bit more powerful. So say you have a machine that's not very powerful, but you want a little bit more power out of what you get from just the app itself. There is a version of Claude Code that you can use on the internet. So if you were to go to claude.com and sign in with your Claude account, you'll see Claude Code on the web. This gives you access to a little bit of a bigger sandbox that's a little bit more powerful, but the thing to keep in mind there is everything's living online. It's not necessarily working out of your computer. So there's the data privacy issue a little bit there, but it does give you access to a little bit of a better sandbox. So it works, it can do a little bit more. But if you do have a well-spec'd out computer like mine, the best way to use Claude Code is through the command line. And let me pull that up quickly. So I'm going to open up a terminal window on my Mac. If you're on Windows, this would be command prompt, I believe. And we'll go into the details of how to install Claude Code, I believe, in a later session. But I'm just going to go to my desktop. Let me see what's in here. Let's go to the accessible housing folder. And to enable Claude Code from the command line, all I need to do is type in Claude. And so this will start up. And this isn't as friendly, I would say. You need to be a little bit more used to working in the command line. But what this does is it really moves it out of the sandbox environment that's in your app and moves it to your computer. Now it has full access to your computer. It can use it can use all the hardware that's on there, and it has a lot more access to your file system. So you can point it to, tell it, okay, go to my documents folder in the Vanderbilt folder under my documents folder, and it will do that for you, and it'll go grab files. It basically has full system access in the command line version. But it is able to do exactly the same things as the app version. It's just more powerful. I see there might be a question in the chat. Yes, directions for a Mac. So if you open up a terminal window, and if again you do need to have this installed. So I will share installation instructions in just a second. So if you don't have this already installed, it won't work. But you can just navigate to a location on your computer where you want to work out of, and then you just type in Claude and it would work. How is the Claude CLI to the extension on VS Code different in terms of functionality? I believe it is more or less the same. The main difference is that in VS Code, you are a little bit more code first. So you're really like,
Yeah.
in the code, you're looking at all the code, but you're not.
And
This is
I can
technical.
jump
Hi,
in for
Jesse. Yes, go ahead.
Hi, hello, I'm here now. Hello. Yeah, and the other difference is really the model may be the same. You might be working in Claude, Claude Opus, 4.7, but the agent harness is completely different. And so in VS Code, you don't have that same agent harness. And we're going to see in a little bit that that can really make all the difference. And so if you notice a big difference when you're doing Opus 4.7 and something else versus Claude Code, that's entirely due because of that harness where it actually knows how to access the files, knows how to go after. So think of Claude Code as being an entire infrastructure, which is built around agent first, and we're going to be exploring that a lot over the next couple of weeks, and versus one where it happens to be calling Opus
I think
or
they're asking about
Sonnet.
the Claude Code extension specifically on VS Code, not just calling. Is that what you were answering about?
Yeah, I've not used the Claude Code extension specifically. Honestly, I've moved completely to just
Mm.
Claude Code on the CLI. I haven't used an IDE in over 6 months. So I
I
don't.
use the Claude Code. I use
You do?
Claude Code on VS Code, and I like it because I'm more of a terminal person. So I would say that if you like the terminal, like I do, then I enjoy Claude Code on VS Code, especially if you're using Windows. But there's also, I mean, they're pretty much the same. It's just one is in VS Code and one is in their own like wrapper thing.
Is it the
So
same
the thing to keep
cursor?
in mind is, are you how you're calling it? Because Claude Code would be, so if it's calling all of Claude Code, that's one thing. If it's calling the just the model, that would be a different. And cursor, I don't know.
Yeah, the last time I used Cursor, I didn't download a specific Claude Code plugin, so I'm not sure. But as vanilla, you can connect it to your Anthropic account, and it's very agentic. But it is not Claude Code. It is Cursor's entire agentic system that they developed. So functionally similar, but not the same.
So to answer Maxwell's question, that's kind of what we were talking about with the VS Code extension. So on VS Code, you can get Claude Code on that IDE. And so if you prefer working in an IDE or something like that, that's what I would recommend is get a Claude Code in VS Code. And that works pretty well. But by itself, it's more its own thing.
And in a sense, that is kind of what Cowork is as well. It's designed for other things. It's not designed to develop systems and solutions, but that is very much that agentic infrastructure with a very different kind of a front end.
Awesome. Jesse, I'm hand it off to you if you want to take over.
All right. Well, let me start though by saying any additional questions before we take another dive in. All right. So let me ask you a question, and you can answer this by under reaction. You'll notice that there's a you can click reaction and give me a check mark, a green check mark if you have used Claude Code, Claude Cowork, or some other agent. Okay. So give me a green check mark. Give me a red check mark if you've only used chat. Ah, so we've had some that have used both. Okay, very good. Excellent. All right. So let's dive into and let's talk about what's different in terms of capabilities and under the hood between chat, Cowork, and Claude Code. And this is actually mirrored across all the AI ecosystems. And generally, the difference that we're talking about here is chat versus an agentic workflow. Okay. Um, but first, let me open this up to you. Uh, what do you think is the difference? So somebody share with us what you see the difference is between chat and an agentic workflow. Those of you that have experienced both. Paris, yeah, agent does things, absolutely. Although chat can do some things, right? It can search, it can access tools. So what else? And feel free to either put in chat or to unmute yourself, whichever you'd like to do. Ooh, takes over your directories. It can. That's right. You can give it to it. You can give a control to directories, actually. Uh, yeah, chat is a great helper, but the agent can be a task manager. There's more going on there. It can manage tasks over a longer horizon. Agent has more autonomy and control over local directories. Yeah, absolutely. Assuming that it's running and has access to your local directories. Uh, oh, Ida, and this one is an interesting. You can build skills. It turns out you can build skills in lots of different places, and we will talk about that. Lori, understandable. Agents can scare you. Um, they can be scary because all of a sudden, they're not just doing something and answering a question, right? They're going off and they're working for hours, could be. Um, But this is why permissions become very important, and we'll be talking about that. So, uh, and when you are asking, agents can run things directly in the shell, they can if you give it permission. You'll notice that there are some settings when you're running agents, and we'll see these, some of which are very, they're very safe. They're very conservative. So anything you do, the agent has to ask before it can actually do. Sometimes you can run it with all the permissions turned off. Not necessarily a good idea. And then there are things that are in between where the agent can handle things that the model considers safe, and generally that is safer. That's a new capability. So, Shay, agentic workflow introduces a loop where the model can reason, act, and observe results before finalizing an answer. That's very much it. That's very close to it. Matter of fact, you can do even more than that. Agents have the ability to spawn sub agents. So now let's think about the difference here. We're going to look at a visualization in just one moment. Agents do a chat does one thing. They might be able to take some action. They might reason as well, but then they return to you, and then it's up to you. An agent, on the other hand, can take a goal, reason about the goal, come up with a plan before it does anything, spin up sub-agents as needed, take multiple actions, evaluate its answers before returning to you, depending on the task that you've given it. So yes, a huge difference between the two. Let's go ahead and just take a look at a quick visualization. I'm going to share my whole screen here, so it's going to get just a little bit ugly for a moment while I get everything pulled up here. Here we go. Now I'm going to go ahead and just show you what a visualization of what things look like in chat versus an agent. Same call between these two. So I'm over here at Nissan uh, right now, just as we speak. And you can ask a question, and something like this is going to happen. I'm going to pause this before we allow the agent to respond. And this is just a synthesis of this. So you have an issue, and what's happening here, it's not even calling a tool, right? In this case, the chat is maybe drawing on an internal database, maybe doing a search, but really all that it's doing is giving this high level answer. And then it's up to you, right? So here's background on it. It can't really take a whole lot of action necessarily. It has recommended actions for you to take. So let's see what happens when we run this through an agent. Same prompt here. Now notice it's analyzing the request, then coming up with a task plan. I'm going to pause it right here. Notice it's doing a couple of things. First of all, planned out, then came up with a task plan, which it is tracking. Now, in a task plan, that means that in addition to the agent now keeping track of what it's supposed to be doing, it can decide whether it needs to spawn sub-agents to handle tasks as well, and then spawn sub-agents. How do the agents communicate? Well, in the Claude Code and Claude Cowork system, what happens is they actually communicate through a file, which is the task file. So the task file has a list of all the things that need to be done. And just like you might do with the team, you might say, hey, when you're done with this, go ahead and put a little marker here that says that you're done with this and say what happened and give the results. It's a file. So it creates a file on your subdirectory because it has permissions to create files in your subdirectory, then can plan out, and it has a much longer horizon where it can actually reason for a long period of time by keeping track of where it is in the task list. And then we have skills here. Notice the skills. So we're going to see skills are a way to extend the capability of your model. Skills can actually be called in chat, but they can also really be leveraged by agents. Skills are human authored or human co-authored, and they extend the capability of your model by providing a prompt, and we're going to be looking at that more in depth, but it also can provide tools as well. As a matter of fact, let me go and ask you, and you can take your checks and X's down. Let me ask you, how many people remember the bad old days? I'll stop my share for just a moment. We'll come back to this. How many of you remember the bad old days when you asked a model to create a PowerPoint for you or something like that, that it said, and you got it all excited. It said, yes, I can create the PowerPoint for you. And what it did was it came up with a list like of bullet points. And it's okay, here you go. Now you can create the PowerPoint. Do you remember that? So frustrating. So in September of last year, all of a sudden Anthropic announced that and that the Anthropic models could now all of a sudden create PowerPoints, like binary PowerPoint files where you could ask it to create something, it would create the PowerPoint file, and then it would allow you to download it and you could show the PowerPoint. And it wasn't just PowerPoint. They also said that it could do Word documents, and they also said that it could do Excel workbooks, whole workbooks, where it would allow you to download the workbook where it had created it had created uh, files, formulas for you. All of a sudden, it could do this. It turns out that what they actually did, what Anthropic actually did, was they released skills. So they created an Excel skill. So what was in this Excel skill? The Excel skill had a description of what a good PowerPoint should be, right? Design-wise, content-wise, what it should look like. Also in this skill was some Python code. And the Python code was designed to write a PowerPoint presentation. You know that you can use Python to create a whole PowerPoint presentation. But the trick is you've got to know how to use that. And so that's what the skill did. It translated between what the user was saying into Python code and then called this script to actually write out to write out a full PowerPoint, a PPTX, complete file. So in actuality, what they released in September 2025 was skills. And that's what we have now. So let's go back to our simulation here. I'll pull this back up. We'll go back to it. So that's what's happening here. So the agent has pulled up skills. It knows how to do an analysis of manufacturing process. It also has a skill around the Smyrna plant config and ROI prediction. It's pulled up all those skills, and probably associated with each of those are going to be some code, so it can actually call and write special code, so it can actually solve problems. Let's let it finish up. So skills loaded. Now I need to find the relevant production data for the Smyrna line. Let me search each of the data repositories. So now it knows how to access, probably because of that Smyrna skill that it loaded. Now it knows how to do an analysis because of the skills. It has guidance. These skills are co-authored by people, and we're actually going to be making a lot of skills between ourselves. So now this is the comparison between what you can do with chat and what you can do with an agent. Agents without any skills built in are okay. They can do a lot more, but agents with skills are tremendously more powerful than chat and more powerful than agents alone. Let me pause here. What questions do you have? Now, we've taken a look between the two. What questions do you have about chat versus agent and agent skills? Okay, many AI chat sources carry out task listing code, pseudocode generation. Uh, I would say, Maxwell, that chat has benefited, right, from skills, absolutely. And it can do a lot more because it has the skills there. Skills actually give even chat agents the ability to run that Python code. And so you can actually load, in chat after skills was tremendously more powerful. When Anthropic released the ability to write PowerPoint and Excel and Word, that was in chat. So the question is, can it spin up sub-agents? Can it access your subdirectory? Does it have task file that can be shared between agents? And the answer with chat is no. So agents have the ability to do more work over a longer period of time and spin up additional agents. Why? Okay, so Andrea, why didn't the chat call the agent to produce a better answer? The issue has to do with the scaffolding. with what we call the agent harness. When you're running chat, you might just be running chat as a in your browser, right? So there is no there. Where is it going to spin up this additional agent? Where is it going to be running this Python code? Now they might have built in the back end the ability to run some Python code, and that's especially with skills that gives the ability, but you have one agent running, one LLM that you're actually accessing, and all of the other things that we count on agent harnesses to do for us, the infrastructure simply is not there. Does the agent find the skill itself? Good question. So we're going to be taking a look at the at how you build a skill and what's involved in the skill. We're actually going to be taking a look at the architecture of this. How many of you have heard, and you can just do a quick hand raise here. How many of you have heard of MCP, Model Context Protocol? So a few folks. Okay, great. Wouldn't mind me calling on you? Hey, Sean, could you share you can just unmute. What is MCP so far as you understand it?
I don't understand it. I just know the term. I mean, I keep hearing MCP, so
It's like everywhere, right? Yeah,
that's
it's
right.
everywhere.
That's right.
Okay, great. Somebody else then, who can just sort of give your first best guess of what an MCP is? Go and unmute and let's share.
It's a standard way of
Paris, please. Yeah.
connecting to, it's a standard way of connecting to tools
That's right. Or to anything, right? So
or
the
sorry, anything. Yeah.
MCP, right? You might have heard it referred to as like the USB connecting agents to, right, to whatever. It could be data sources, could be tools, could be. So the downside to MCP, very cool, and can work with any agent that is MCP enabled is they take up a lot of space. So when you want to use an MCP, you have to load a lot of information which describes every aspect of that MCP. But then your model can use that MCP, but you could load up maybe some MCPs are huge. Like the MCP for GitHub was enormous, and you only have a context window that's so large. So what's different about skills is they're very targeted, right? They do one specific thing, but they do it very well. And when you load up a skill for your model to be aware of it, it loads up maybe 100 tokens, maybe 200 tokens, very, very small. And the only thing which is in that description is you have this skill available. If the model decides that it needs the skill, it'll pull up the rest of the skill. So skills are loaded dynamically. Skills are composable, meaning you can load up multiple skills. We just saw an example of that. So in some ways, skills are covering some of the same area that MCPs covered. MCPs are still fantastic. MCPs are often something that skills can call. But often you can solve the problem that you have if it's well defined enough and small enough. You can solve it using a skill certainly rather than having to build an MCP or even having to call an MCP. Okay.
Jesse, there's a quick question here, and I wasn't
Yes.
sure if I knew what was correct. They were asking about the platform that you used to show the chat versus the agent. Was that just an
Yes.
artifact that you created
Yeah.
on Claude?
Yeah, that was just an artifact that I created, but you're going to actually, one of the things we're going to be starting even next on Thursdays, we're going to be starting to build skills. So you'll be able to try this out directly with your own. As a matter of fact, and we'll do a full introduction of skills, is you'll see that the skill creator skill, it's very meta, the skill creator skill that allows you to create a skill uh, actually helps you test it out and will be itself doing a comparison of how well the agent operates without the skill and how well an agent operates with the skill. So it has a validation loop in there that you'll see as well. So, all right. So let's go ahead and take a let me see if there are any additional questions right now, and then we're going to dive in and we're going to take a closer look at exactly what agents are, what LLMs are, and what agents are. If you need a skill for a short-term project, do I need to retire the skill? You probably want to turn it off or take it out. and you'll see it's very easy to take it out unless you're going to be reusing it. You'll want to use skills whenever you want to have knowledge, which is you want to have something which is reproducible for yourself, or, and this is actually pretty critical, something you'd like to share with other people. Because skills can be shared and can be used by every major player right now. OpenAI adopted agent skills, Google adopted agent skills. Even the open source models now have adopted agent skills. So that means you can design in one platform and share with others as well. It's very powerful. Matter of fact, it's pretty transformative for organizations. I think one of the most important things that any company and any department, any university can do right now is start developing a set of agent skills that are shareable to take care of the tasks which are right now being done manually. And hopefully by the end of the AI summer, you'll have a bunch that you'll be able to share. Does Gemini also have access to skills and agents? Depends on how you're accessing it. But yes. So yes, Gemini 3 has is skills native. And if you have the agent harness, if you're running within an agent harness, and this could be something like a Claude Code, or it could be through an API, then yes, it can use skills as well. Is there a better GUI for managing agent skills than the default Claude interface? My goodness, this is the hardest part right now. This is ugly. Now, to be fair, we've only really started to talk about skills and use skills broadly since December. So there's a lot of infrastructure which is not there. So you'll find people managing skills right now by using GitHub repositories, for example. I will put out a warning. There are lots of skills that are available online. You can go and find them. You might find one that sounds like it can do exactly what you wanted to do, but beware. Remember that one of the capabilities that skills has is to spin up an instance and to run code in an instance. So it can run code within an instant just within the skill. It's always a dangerous thing when you take unknown code, an unknown skill, and run it in your environment. They are sandbox. They're meant to be safe. But has somebody come up with an exploit? I don't know. So be sure that the skills that you use are ones that you are from people that you know, or ones that you've developed, or people that are reputable. This is not a solved problem yet, but I do see this as a possible area of a security threat. All right. Is this something that IT could vet? Maybe, maybe. I think it's something that we'll probably have to take a look at. And Maxwell says, yes, we are good. Absolutely. And again, we have to do a lot of education around this, right? And a lot of building around it as well. I think one of the first things that we do is we find a good way within our organizations, within Vanderbilt, within our other organizations, wherever you're from, find a way to have a vetted place where you can store and safely share skills. So, excellent. All
Yeah,
right.
and I just wanted to also note that the good thing is that skills are just text documents, so you can vet them too.
You can look at them. Absolutely. Now, if I'm a hacker, I'm gonna write some really difficult to read Python in there, right? So definitely look at it, and that will give you more and more confidence. Uh, think about what kind of data you have. If you have any sensitive data, you're not going to want to run a skill against it that you're not comfortable to do. Can you get the LLM to vet? Quite possibly. I think Maxwell's going to probably and others in IT are probably going to be looking at all different possibilities of how to vet these things. Mythos is what we want. We want to point mythos at the skills and get feedback on that. So we're going to find actually that you can generate skills well, either in chat or in Cowork or in Claude Code, but there is a difference. If you are creating a skill that is code heavy, you're probably going to want to create it in Claude Code. If it's really code heavy, And I'll give you an example of this, and you'll actually be seeing some output of one of my skills. A skill that I created was one that would take video recordings, just like this one, of Zoom calls when I'm teaching. And so to the skill, I give the Zoom video recording, the Zoom transcript, the PowerPoint or the slide deck that I was sharing. I share all those things, and I say, create a lecture handout from this, notes. And so the idea is that it goes through, it summarizes, it finds the key points, the key learning objectives, and then goes through and gives a narrative of what was covered. And when it hits a part where I've been talking about something in reference to the screen, it'll actually insert as an image the actual slide where I was at that moment. It does that by matching the content of what I'm saying to the content of the slide. If it finds that I'm talking about something which is not in the slide, then it goes to the video because apparently I started to do a screen share. And so it actually does a screen grab, it does a frame grab from the video and inserts that as an image. And yes, I created this as a skill in about 2 hours. It's remarkably effective. This is how I'm doing all of my lecture notes going forward. But I had to create it using Claude Code because it was creating stuff that would only work on a Mac. And I was like, well, I want you to write stuff and so it can work on a Mac or any place where people are running this. And so it's got to be applicable everywhere. And so Claude had to do some heavy coding, right, to figure out how to do this. That's not something that a chat would be able to do terrifically well necessarily, but Claude Code did it without any trouble. So could chat have created the agent? I'm sorry, could chat have created the skill? Quite possibly. It just wouldn't have been as full featured as the one that I wanted to have. All right. So let's go ahead and take a look at where this capability comes from. All right. So you may have seen this. If you've been in one of our sessions before, you're gonna recognize the slide that I'm going to be sharing in just a moment. Uh, and we're going to go through it a little bit quickly, but I do want to make sure that we are well centered here. And let me go ahead and put this over here. So I'll go and I'll show this as a full slideshow. All right. Many of you may know what we're looking at here. Can somebody share what we're looking at here? And you can put it in chat or you can unmute yourself. What are we looking at here? That's it. This is an LLM. Exactly. This is an LLM. And this is how the LLM works. Even more correctly, it's a transformer. Even more correctly, it's a decoder transformer. Fantastic. We type in our context. So this is a chat. We type in our context. It gets turned into token encodings. And these get turned into token embeddings. And I'll be including additional material about this that gets more into depth. But the idea here is taking all words or whatever modality we're working in, and it turns it into vector representations. Because remember, this is a high dimensional vector space. It's a semantic space. So it puts each token in a location in space. And can anybody remember so I usually start with the location of a particular term. What's the word that I start with? Anybody remember what's sitting right here? Yeah, this is king. King is sitting right here. And that means all concepts having to do with king are nearby. So what are some of the terms that are sort of nearby in this space? So if I were to look for other terms, what would be close by? Could be queen, queen over here, highness. Oh, I like highness. How about some other ones? Majesty, crown. I love it. Yes, all of those
Royalty.
terms are
Yeah.
sort of in a cloud around. And I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I said royalty. I should have just put in the chat. Sorry.
No, please. Oh, please feel free to always unmute. I love it when people unmute. Some people don't love to. So thank you for saying that. Royalty. I like that one especially. Royalty. Fantastic. So the cool thing about this space is you can do math in it. So and those of you who know this, don't say it right away, but if I take king and I subtract woman, where am I? Yes. Ruler could be government. What else? Any other words close by over in this? And oh, you were still, yeah. Oh, I'm sitting on the, let me make sure that you're seeing the right screen. Oh, yeah. Now, this is me just motioning with my hands. So if you want to see what's going on, it's only happening in the arrows right here. Okay, great. So, yes, so this is like ruler. Okay, so king minus man is going to picture over. You know, if I add woman to it, then where am I? Now I'm at queen. Exactly. You can do math here. This is how AI works. It does math on the semantic space, and it does two kinds of math. The first is attention, and the second is what I call a 50-cent word. It's a multi-layer perceptron. So let's talk about attention first. I'm going to give you a sentence. Tell me if I'm in the right place. She looked across the board and said triumphantly, "King me. Am I in the right place?" She looked across the board and said, "King me." Is that ruler? Yeah, it's not even a noun, right? I'm in the totally wrong place. How did you know that I was in the wrong place? What was the clue? Yes. Looked across the board triumphantly. So that means that we were doing something else. And so the words that came before changed the meaning of the word king and let me know that I needed to be in a different place. As a matter of fact, that's exactly what attention does. Attention takes all the words that come before and moves you to a new place. It actually averages the meaning of the words that come before, a weighted average, to move you to a new location. And then it kind of puts you over here. But then somebody said, named a game. But think about this. She looked across the board and said triumphantly, "King me." What game am I playing? Checkers, right, Sean. How did you know this? What were the clues in the sentence? Where did your knowledge that this is checkers come from? And you can unmute if you,
Yeah.
it's maybe easier than try to type it.
King me. That's the,
Right?
where else do you say king me, right?
So you knew that when you say king me, in that way, it was checkers. You knew this. You had learned this. You had learned this. That's what the MLP does. Uh, it's a little bit more common to say king me in checkers. Heavy chess players, do you actually say king me in chess? You don't king someone. Okay, yeah. Um, so it's got to be checkers. This is the role of the MLP. The MLP is the world knowledge that you can then apply to all the words that you have in there, all the phrases that you have in there. It's called the multi-layer perceptron, and you can think of it as a fuzzy JPEG of everything it's been trained on. So it's not a lookup table. It is a representational space of what it's been trained on. And actually here, if we go back a little bit, one way that you can get a better AI model is to make your MLP bigger. As a matter of fact, when you talk about large language models, that's often what you're doing. You've increased the MLP so it can learn more about the world. This has downstream effects. This means that the model is bigger, takes more energy to run, and we can talk about energy too a little bit later. So it is it comes at a cost. So that's how it does its trick of enriching what's happening. And then the next thing that it does is it produces a probability over all the next tokens, meaning a simplified way of saying this, it guesses the next word. She looked across the board and said triumphantly, "King." Well, what's the most likely next word? Probably me. Could be anything, but the highest probability is going to be me. So that's what the models do. They only and ever just produce a plausible next word by producing a probability over all the next words you could have. And a token is a word or a subword, but it represents a unit of representation so a token could be cat could be a token. That's probably could be anything 63. Dog could be 49. It's just a lookup number. And what the token probabilities do is just say, what is the next most likely token? And then how do you actually go and do the rest? Well, it produces one word. And so what you do is to actually get the next word is you put that word back into the context. So in here, we'll go all the way back so we can sort of see what this looks like. So yes, it produces the next word. It puts that next word into the context. It reruns everything. And that's how you actually produce text. That's what's actually happening with an LLM. That's a very rapid introduction to LLMs, but I wanted you to get sort of the skinny here. What questions do you have about the basic underlying mechanism of how LLMs are working? And feel free to unmute if it's easier to ask your question that way. What questions do you have about how LLMs work?
How does it know? I guess it goes through several decoder stacks or
Yeah.
attention MLPs. So how does it know how many times it goes through? Is that iterative or just sequential or?
It's going to be sequential. Great question. So it doesn't, a really interesting question though. So you have a certain number of stacks. The more stacks you have broadly, the more capable your model is, right? So when you talk about small language models, in addition to that MLP being smaller, it'll probably have fewer stacks as well. So the more stacks, the better job it can usually do. An interesting modification of this architecture is what's called a looped transformer. And that is where you do loop back to a transformer. And there's broad speculation that that is actually what Anthropic's Mythos model is doing. Is many people believe that's a looped transformer. That's a slightly different architecture where it iterates on something and then moves on. But even that's a set number of iterations. Great question. All right. Other questions? Well, I have a question for you. When you put in the same prompt a second time, let's say you start up a new session, you get a different answer. Why?
Does the token embeds or encodings change?
Yeah. Lori and Gina had sort of the same idea. So everything from the context all the way to the token probabilities is deterministic. But what we do is we add a little bit of noise to the token probabilities. We add the noise, and so we don't always just produce the top most probable token. Why? Because people are repetitive. When we write things, we say the thing again, we restate ourselves again and again and again. What's the most likely next word? Again. And we want to break that loop. So the way that we do that is we add a little bit of noise purposely to the token probabilities. So we say we don't choose the most probable one. Sometimes you take a different path. This actually gives us models which are better. They might be counted as sort of more creative, but they're better problem solvers. So we actually add a little bit of noise. And once you start walking down a path, then that can look different. Okay. So now, what are all the places? Where does information come into the model? Let's say that this model got trained in 2025, and I want to ask it about what was the coolest thing that happened in January in 2026 in the AI world. Is it going to know that? No. It only knows what it was trained on. And models are not training constantly. They're trained once. This is where the power comes in. Power consumption comes in when you're training these models. And when you train the models, it takes an enormous amount of power. And especially when these MLPs get big and when you have many decoder stacks, It takes a great deal of power. So no, and money. So you know you don't want to just keep constantly training them. Plus, when you train the model, you run the risk of catastrophic forgetting. So no, you don't continue to train the models. So that means it's not going to know, right? But models actually are not bad about answering questions about current day events. What's happening?
It's going
Oh,
to the web.
it's going to the web. And how does it get that information into the model? So somehow it's getting to the web. Absolutely. Where do we put that information? Into the context. That's it. The only way to get information to be considered by a model in real time is to get it into that context. So that means when it does a web search to look things up, it's actually putting it back into the context. As a matter of fact, that was one of the other big advancements for models. And a good thing that our context has gotten so long now, right? Now we can actually do many more things in that context because now what it's doing is it is pulling up tools. So here's an example of tools. So we have lots of work that the model is doing. It's going through, and then it might decide that it needs to do an internet search. It might look to see if it has a skill to do the thing that you're asking it to do. So in a chat, what would happen is you ask it something, it realizes it needs to do an internet search. It calls a tool to do the internet search, and it puts that right back into the context. What is the capital of the state of Washington? The model might think Seattle. It does an internet search and it finds the capital of the state of Washington is what is the capital of the state of Washington? If you don't know what it is, Olympia. That's right. So now you put Olympia. So in the context, if you go and look, it says state of capital of Washington is Olympia. And then it responds, the capital of the state of Washington is Olympia. Why? Because it's sitting there in the context. So the context is the name of the game. We want to have the most relevant information in context. And we only want relevant information in context. If we put a bunch of irrelevant information into context, we start to experience what we call context rot. So what this means is if you have a bunch of irrelevant information, it's going to influence, remember through attention, it's going to influence every token that comes after it. Whether or not it has anything to do with it, it's going to have some influence on that. So, and Paris, yes, exactly. It is temperature. That noise we edit, that's the temperature dial. Very, very good. That's what that noise is. Okay, so we move things into context. We need to curate our context. Even chat models have the ability to go and get information. They can do an internet search. They can call up skills. They can do computer interaction. That means it can write code to solve a problem because it turns out models are terrible at math because it treats everything as tokens, right? Um, have you seen the number 12 a lot? So 12 is like a dozen. You might have seen it with baker's dozen. There are 12 eggs. You see it all the time, right? So 12 should be a token. All right. So 12 is a token. It has its own embedding. Three, you see the number three around all the time, right? Third time's the charm. Three is a crowd. Three is its own token. So tell me, what is 123 plus one? All right. Well, this is the token 12 plus the token 3. Well, now it has to try to, oh, baker's dozen is 13. See, I was working with my small language model. So, uh, so it turns out that math is really tough for a model to do because it thinks of everything in terms of tokens, but it knows when you're asking a math problem, and it knows that it can call a calculator. So it calls a calculator, says, user wants to know 123 plus 1, 124, brought back into context and is solved. So many of the developments that we've had in AI and AI agents has been around the curation and the enrichment of this context as the model is solving problems. So what do we have here? Over here we have computer action. We have MCP, Model Context Protocol servers. That means, hey, you want to look up data in this database. You can actually just call that MCP server. It will bring back information that you need. You can have other tools. How many people have heard of RAG? Just give me a quick thumbs up if you've heard of RAG. Yeah, a lot of people, right? It turns out we may be past the golden age of RAG, because what RAG used to be was you have a bunch of different, you have documents that all get chopped up. And what happens is it tried to do a semantic search, a link between what you had in your context with what was stored in RAG, and it would pull up the chunks and put the chunks into context if there was a close enough match. Really, you're hoping the whole lot goes right, right? You're hoping that you described it well enough what's going on in chat, in the context, that it would match to something over here. You're hoping that the chunking that was done to break up those documents was in the right place. But what's happening now is we're finding that agents, that we're going to see in just a moment, do a much better job of pulling out relevant information. So I mentioned RAG, but you're going to see fewer and fewer things that necessarily depend on RAG. All right, let me pause here. What questions do you have about chat and its use of tools? So if you're in Claude Desktop and using chat to write code, where is it doing that? So it's doing that in a special area that it's reserved to actually do that work. So it's not directly in your computer; it's in a virtual computer, a virtual machine associated with the desktop app. There are also ways where it can be writing code in a hosted server, so it depends on how it's configured, but it's not running on bare metal. It's running on a virtual machine, a virtual environment within your machine. All right, let's go a little bit further here. So let's talk about skills. So with skills, if you have something that is brought up, you mention it, something that you want to do, um, it's going to call a skill because it realized it had the skill that might fit. So it goes in, it pulls that one skill in and puts just the top part into context and then continues working. If it determines that this is a useful skill and there's more stuff underneath, it can pull up more stuff as well. So this is called progressive loading. This is progressive exposure. So it doesn't load up everything necessarily. It just loads the top part. And keep in mind, it loads it right at the moment when you mention something that it thinks it needs a skill for. So think about everything else. It might load things. MCPs get loaded at the very top. So now you have a lot of distance between the thing you're trying to do and that MCP. A skill is loaded. So you mentioned you needed a certain thing. The skill is loaded right here. So now the work that you need to do in the context for it is right next to the skill. I think this is one of the reasons why skills are so remarkably good at what they do. Okay, so this is still chat. Let's go and talk about what an agent looks like, okay? So here, an LLM plus tools plus autonomy is an agent. So it's chat, yes, but it has access to tools and it has some autonomy. It has a loop that it can follow, make calls on its own until it decides that it has solved a problem. This is what I call agent 2.0. Agent 2.0 is you don't just have that loop, you have a whole harness. It's called an agent harness. So within here, you have that LLM going along just like we saw before, right? But now within this, you have the harness. And what does the harness have access to? The harness has access to a file system. And if you're running Claude Code on your command line, the file system that it has access to could be one of your subdirectories. You've given it permission to go just to that subdirectory. So what can it do? Well, through the harness, the LLM can write files, read files, search through files. It can do tons of stuff. It can keep track of tasks. It can write to a task manager, keep track of what it's doing. It can spawn up sub-agents. that also have access to all of these resources as well. It can have a memory. It might have a graph representation of knowledge, and it also has access to skills just like the other ones do. So now it has its whole ecosystem in order to do things. So, so what? Why does that make such a big difference? It's the context. Now, instead of having to depend on something else to pull up what are the proper documents, now it can write code, it can write bash commands, command line commands to directly go out and look in the documents to see what specific documents it needs to carry out a task, what parts of which documents it needs to carry out a task. And it can be very specific, and it can spin up multiple subagents to go and assess all the content of the files. And that subagent might decide, you don't need this whole file, you need just this part. Or actually, all you need is the summary of it. So now that context for the lead agent is highly, highly curated. There's no fluff. There's no extra. And it doesn't have to keep track of what's happening in the long run because that's handled in the tasks. It can offload memory when it needs to, so it doesn't have to grow and grow and grow its context, so it can keep track of things. It can offload. It can say, all right, I'm going to put this into memory. I don't need it right now. I'll be able to pull it up next time that I need it. So now context is managed. And now you have context which only carries that which is most important. You avoid context rot. And this is all up to the harness to handle the problem of interacting with memory and interacting with tasks, interacting with the documents, and with the skills. What questions do you have about an agent and an agent harness, what I call Agents 2.0? Does it do semantic search of memory or tasks? It can do so. Um, so all the things that we did earlier with all of those other tools, it could do. So you could have a RAG store if you wanted here. There are different ways of doing memory search. And actually, what's becoming increasingly true is that performance, yes, is due to how good of an agent you have, and how good of an LLM you have, but is also the quality of your harness. Huge advances have been made because there's a harness which has a better memory store and does maybe semantic search across its memory versus just a keyword search, for example. So these are actually the decisions that builders can make that can do better at solving general problems. Now, why do I call this Agent 2.0? Call this Agent 2.0 because this is kind of like available to you, right? If you do, and this is a general purpose architecture. Last year, if we wanted to build agents, we had to kind of do it by hand, and we had to handcraft what the agent knew and what the agent had access to. Now we have general purpose harnesses that can take the task that we have given it and say, I need to have 3 subagents here that have these particular skills. Let me pull up the skills. I'm going to spin these off and wait until they come back to me. I'm going to put in my task manager that I have done this and that I'm waiting for responses on these 3 agents. Agents 2.0 dynamically create the architecture and the orchestration for it to handle problems. Agent 1.0, everything had to be handcrafted. Agent 2.0, like Claude Code, like Claude Cowork, and like other agents that you're seeing coming on the market, are not handcrafted. Instead, they have a large number of skills that we create or that we give to it that actually solves problem for us. Yeah, so regex also is very, very important. How many, is there anybody here who's like a master at doing regex and at doing command line tools? Anybody here? Don't be too shy. Who has spent their time like in the trenches? People are being too modest here. I know some of you have. But it's hard, right? I mean, you have to be using it all the time to be really good at it. So it turns out that Models are terrific at writing these command line tools. As a matter of fact, the best agent harnesses have specialized versions of all of those commands to, at scale and in parallel, carry out those tasks on behalf of the agent. So agent just writes a bash command, writes a regular expression, but the harness has specialized code which can do that massively in parallel to quickly return the response. That is what is putting RAG to bed right now. Okay, so now let's go ahead and talk a little bit more about agents and how they work. And so Stack Overflow always had the things that we needed. All right, let me pause here. Any other questions then about agents and the harness? Okay, good. Then uh, actually, I'll talk about this too, just real quickly. Um, Things changed so much after December that we changed how we even think about how we improve our models. It used to be that that we would first think about retraining our model, right? So retrain our model so it could do more things. Now we don't do that. Now what we think about is, all right, I need my model to be able to do this new thing. The very first we think about is, can I do a skill? Can I create a skill that would do this for me? If that doesn't quite work, then we look at the harness. Well, is there something wrong with the harness? Can I modify the harness and so it can do this thing better? And then, and only then, do we actually say, do I need to retrain the model? And so the model can do this thing better. And this is great because skills are fast to create. We're going to create one right now, as a matter of fact. Harnesses, it requires coding. So, I mean, that's, you're going to have to, be, careful on that. Luckily, we have really good coding agents and training models. You have to have horsepower to do this, right? That's going to take time. And you may not be an option. You're not going to retrain Opus 4.7. That's not going to happen. So you'd either have to have a small language model or a service that you'd pay for. A lot easier and a lot more efficient and effective now to create skills. Let me answer the question here. What enables a harness to run in massive parallel fashion? So if you code Python right, you can spin up multiple threads and have it handle. And sometimes it does it by calling another parallelized. So there's specialized libraries often that folks will write. And so it will do regex across multiple files all at once. So it replaces the stock standard bash commands with ones that are specialized to actually run across multiple in a very lightweight fashion across multiple files at once. All right. So we're going to write a skill, but I need your help. What problem would you like to solve? Somebody come up with a problem that you would like to solve that we could write a skill around now. So could be anything. I want you to think about this for a moment, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up just as an example the skill that I wrote for that problem that I was talking about before which was how to make really good lecture notes. So be thinking, and I'm going to pull this up and show you how I created this one. Okay. So, oh, come on, where did you go? All right, so a skill is really a subdirectory. So here's a subdirectory, and if you go above it, you'll see that it's under the skill subdirectory. So this skill is called lecture recording to lecture notes. So in here, it has the SKILL.md, it has scripts, and it also has some evaluations that it's run. Let's go and take a look at SKILL.md. All right, so the name of this is the lecture recording to lecture notes skill. And the description is convert lecture recordings into polished markdown files with auto-extracted screenshots, embedded slides, speaker quotes, Q&A sessions. This is the part which is preloaded into any LLM to make it aware of the skill. So you can see it's not that big, right? This is meant to be short, but if anybody says to this LLM, you know, I want to create some notes out of a talk I just gave. The LLM is going to say, notes out of a talk. Why, that's the same thing as creating lecture notes out of a lecture. And so it will then pull up the rest of the skill. It'll pull up this and it will put this into context right where you mentioned this, right below that. It's going to put this here. And it says, okay, transfer lecture recordings into polished tutorial style. Okay. Workflow. So it's going to confirm that this is what it needs. And it's going to say, oh, yeah, this is exactly what Jesse was talking about. I'm going to load myself up. What do I need to do here? Phase 0, I've got to see if I have all these things available to me. I got to check and see if these things are preloaded. If it's missing, I got to load it up with pip. All the core functionality uses Python packages. Remember the system dependency I mentioned before? So I had to do this instead. Okay, present the inventory to the user. So it's going to come back and tell me what I have. And it's going to wait for the user to proceed to confirm before proceeding. Skills can define the interaction with the user. So in a real sense, skills are the new software. Um, they're composable, right? So if I said, I want to create lecture notes that are on brand for the College of Connected Computing, it'll pull up the CCC brand skill and pull up this skill. And so it will make a handout that is branded in the CCC style. Phase 1, get that slide deck, change it into a PDF that it can work with. Phase 2, just transcript analysis and do screenshot extraction. This is how it does it. I'm talking and say, hey, let me show you. I'm clicking, let me click. It'll trigger, it'll trigger on phrases like that and then go and do a comparison and see if the slide matches what I'm talking about. And if it doesn't, then it will go and grab a frame and put that in. So see, it actually goes here and does a fallback. It looks to see if it can find the frames. And then that does a note generation, and it's going to make it look like this. Give the lecture title, then give the key concepts, the learning objectives. You all are going to see an example of this because I'm going to email it to you later on tonight because I'm going to make a lecture transcript out of what we're doing right now. But the only thing that I realize I have to do is I have to put in the chat notes. So I've got to modify this skill to include chat as well because I want those questions to appear. All right. And then it does this, and it's kind of funny. It does pull quotes. So audience member, question asked, answer given. And you'll see that these are the style rules that it's following. So that is what a skill looks like. All right, now you've had a chance to think a little bit, even though I was talking at you. We're going to create a skill right now, real quick. What problem do you have that we might try to solve using a skill? Run a code on GitHub. Okay. Could you can you describe that a little bit more? And somebody else come up with something else as well.
Jesse, there's a bunch if you'll scroll up in the chat.
Oh, thank you, thank you, thank you so much. Okay. Ooh, schedule a meeting with, oh, I love that. Okay, great. Um, okay. Uh, and skills are very versatile, as you're going to see in just one moment. Let's go ahead and do identify potentially sensitive data fields in databases. Okay, we'll do that one, and what we'll do is we'll try the other ones too. But I think some of these we're going to try this next time. So what I'm going to do is let me start my share again, and now I'm going to go into I'm going to start Cowork, and I'm going to do a new task in Cowork. All right. I want to create a skill 4. Okay. Now, it should call up the skill creator skill. And it should do that because I said I want to create a skill. If you want to make sure that a skill gets called, you can manually call it, right? So if you do a // and you start typing what the skill is, notice up here it says skill creator, create new skills. You can manually fire a skill. So let's do that right here, just so we make sure that we have it. We're going to put it right in there, and we're going to run it. Now, I'm in Cowork. You'll notice I'm in Cowork over here. I'm going to create some more space in just a moment, but know that we're in Cowork because this is not going to have to create a whole bunch of code that I need to transfer to. The code is not the purpose here. The skill is the purpose here. So let's see what it does and how it leads us through. Notice task. This is that lovely harness. It's come up with the task and its task process. Oops. It's pointed at Nissan's CFT. I forgot to change that one. I'll fix that one a little bit later. All right, I'll help you create the skill before drafting. So this is what the skill does. It asks you to clarify what you're doing first. And one of the tools it's using is ask user question. So it can be a prettier way of asking the question. All right. And I don't remember now who asked. Okay, what is this? What are we going to be giving it? Schema and sample rows. What do you think? What is this going to look like?
Hi, I asked the question. It would be let's say, ideally it would be live database connection, but that wouldn't be great for a demo.
Right.
Let's just say schema only DDL and column lists.
Sounds perfect. Now, if you actually had a connection, this would be fine, right? You could do that and we'll actually lead you through creating the connection so you can do this. But you're right. I don't have access to your database right now. So I'm going to say, all right, once selected, what are you looking for?
Let's say PII and PHI.
Okay. All right. What do you want it to produce?
Let's do the first one, the markdown report with a table.
Okay. And what are you doing with it?
More for the second one, data governance and cataloging.
Okay. And notice a couple of things here, right? So this is drawing on the full knowledge of the LLM, right, to lead you through these questions. But you're the one answering the questions and you're the one who came up with the first idea. The more you provide and you share your expertise in what you're trying to do, the better the skill will be. So this is you co-creating a skill with an LLM. And the reason why I take pains to point that out is a skill which is authored only by an AI does not help that much because a skill is meant to be the base knowledge and capability of the AI augmented by your expertise. And this is the cool thing about skills. It's augmented by your expertise or by others. You can put this in front of other people. Once you author the skill, you can literally put the skill in front of them and say, how did I do? And they'll say, well, this is good, except you forgot that, that really it's not just data governance. We also need to do a compliance review. Now it's even better. So now for the first time, we have a way of allowing people to contribute their expertise to the betterment of an agent, to the betterment of all of their tasks. Everyone can benefit from this by people contributing the skills so the model can do its jobs, its tasks better for the people who built it. So we're going to say data governance. All right, here it is. Here are all the answers, and it's off to the races. While it's working, what questions do you have about skills and agents so far?
What are the general costs for using something like this? Meaning, the pro account at Claude there's limited tokens. I've gotten to places before in asking it to do some research for me that it very quickly ran out of tokens for the day.
Yeah.
Like what is typical and what should we expect to have to spend if we're doing tasks like this,
Yeah.
right? This is kind of a standard skill that we're creating.
Exactly. Well, one thing that I'll point out is that properly created skills can save you token usage. Because a skill can create a way to solve a problem using code rather than tokens. So in this case, what I'm hoping that it will do is come up with a series of regexes, right? So rather than you have to load the entire thing into your context and then looking through it and reasoning against it, it'll do a first pass with regex. That's free. That's not tokens, right? So that is the agent harness, moving the file into place, running the code against it, and coming up with a solution. So that's one thing. But the mileage varies greatly. Um, so what I do, I have Claude Max, but I use this all the time. So I pay $200 a month. There's $100 a month as well. Plus, you can do an overage as well. Um, but yeah, you do a lot of coding. You can hit those. You can definitely hit those limits. What's happening more is that open source models, those small language models, are getting better and better. And especially augmented by skills, small language models might be a way for you to run locally on your machine or on another instance where there are not these mounting costs. You can't do everything. The large, Opus 4.7 is still the king of the hill, Gemini 3, king of the hill for many things, certainly OpenAI GPT 5.5, the heavy duty stuff, but more and more you can do more and more with smaller models that only run on your laptop. Okay, here we go. It's drafted the skill. I'll write 3 test cases. So it drafts it scopes it, asks you questions, drafts it, and then runs 3 test cases in 2 different ways. Comes up with 3 test cases and runs those 3 test cases with an agent that doesn't have the skill to see how well it does, which is the base prompt, and how well it does those 3 test cases with access to the skill. So it is automatically doing a validation here of with and without the skill. Because if the agent does about as well with the skill as without the skill, why bother? No need to write it. No need to do that. You can also see how well it's working as well. Okay. Other questions? And if I've missed, okay, how do you think about the modularity of skills? It's interesting. It depends. I try to, if there's a significant amount of information that needs to be shared between skills, be aware that the only way it's going to be able to communicate from skill to skill is going to be, you know, by handing a file off or within the context. So I try to make skills bite-sized. Some of them can be bigger, but I try to make it and so it is doing and completing one part of either a whole task or a part of a task. You can chain skills together, so one skill calls another skill. But really, you want to keep that skill.md to about 500 lines, because what you remember when it loads up that skill and says, "Oh, I think I need this," it's going to load that full skill.md file. So one trick is you might put other things in the subdirectory. We're going to get much more into the architecture of the skills on Thursday, but you can architect it so it doesn't load up the other stuff unless it needs it. But you try to keep the skill MD itself small, 500 lines. I think this is I love how skills are composable, and they're composable in a semantic way. I am creating a PowerPoint. This is my brand. I'm going to now brand everything I'm doing in creating the PowerPoint because I have both skills loaded. The skills are open source in that you can look at them, but the licensing is going to vary among the skills. All right, here we go. We have one skill.md, no scripts, no references yet. Kept everything in line so we can see what works first. That's great design. Description is intentionally pushy. Triggers on DDL pace, schema audits. What should we mask? So meaning this skill should be fired all the time. Why? You want to be conservative when you're doing an audit, right? So if you're talking about a schema, it's going to fire and check and see if there's sensitive data. All right. Clinical EHR schema, marketplace SaaS schema, internal ops schema. Now, if you have ideas for tests to run, you can give it beforehand. So before you say start building the skill, you can say, hey, I want to build a skill, but don't start yet. Here's stuff you want to know. Here are the test cases I have. Here's a background. I've uploaded these files in the subdirectory. Look at these files before building the skill. Learn about what I'm doing before writing the skill. We went right for it, but you don't have to. All right, now it's launching all 6 runs in parallel. It's launched 6 agents, sub-agents right now. to see how well it's doing. All right, let's see if I have access to if I can look at the skill right now. I don't. Let's see if I can. No, it's not going to let me look at the skill until it's drafted a little bit more. All right. Uh, what other questions do you have about skills while we're allowing this to work? And Umang and Miranda, if you can tell me if I've missed any questions up top that I need to answer.
Somebody did ask if you were doing this in Cowork, if you can speak to how skills live in Cowork versus chat versus code.
So, and I am doing this in Cowork. And the reason why you might want to do it in Cowork versus a chat, this one we could have done in chat. We weren't giving it that much, right? But if I loaded up a subdirectory with like manuals and information and everything like that, I would have done that in Cowork, and I would have said, hey, go check out the subdirectory. I want you to take all that knowledge and put this into a skill, right? The way that we build it here could have been done in a chat, could have been done in Cowork, could have been in Claude Code, would have been overkill in Claude Code. It's going to put this into a temporary location, and then it's going to give me a link to it. So it's going to be a link to it, and I can download it and save at that time, or load it and actually make it available as a skill which is available during this session. So I'll be able to do either one of those that I want to do. Do we assume that all tools are available in the skill builder? The tools that you have available within where you are, the chat, the agent, is what the skill is going to know about and have available. And it's going to assume that it's going to be there. And yes, the skill is going to be an MD file as soon as it gets done. Okay. It's writing them now, so it's getting there. So now it's writing out the reports. And then I'm going to say it looks beautiful. I'm not even going to check it because I want to get to the MD. I bet I might have extra thinking turned on in this too, because it's really thinking this through. Oh, okay. So it ran into a problem here. So that's why it was taking extra time to run. So this is an example of the difference between the agents and the chat, right? I mean, it found a problem. It came up with an alternative plan to solve that problem. This is not you saying failed, copy paste. This is it actually working to solve that problem. We're going to look in and see what it's doing right here. So it's creating its writing files right here. And it is likely writing this in not in the subdirectory, but in its temporary space. But let me go and check and see if it is writing the subdirectory. I had it in the wrong place here. But look, nope, here it is. It's writing it right here. So let's go ahead and take a look in here. This is so sensitive field detector. You see that? We go in there. Let's go and take a look at the SKILL.md. Identify potentially sensitive data fields. And build a sensitivity catalog. So sensitive field detector, it turns database schema into a markdown file that flags columns. When you have what you need, usually it's going to be pasting one of these. If the input is missing, work with what you have and note the limitation in the report. Categories to flag: direct identifiers, quasi-identifiers, financial PII. Now, at this point, if you say, no, 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 this is incorrect here, you can edit the skill file. This is directly editable. So this is where you can put your expertise or expertise of others. You can hand this skill.md and say, what do you think of this to your expert? Say, was this a good description of when this should be called? Was this a good description sufficient enough? Maybe you're international and maybe you're saying, well, those are really nice, but we're in England. We don't have zip and postal codes. So let me edit this and so it's appropriate for our location. HIPAA safe harbor. You may decide, no, I don't want safe harbor. I want anything flagged. But this is what I came up with. You don't like the markdown report that you get? You can edit it right here. This is the structure that it's going to be giving. You notice that this looks not dissimilar to what it created for me for my lecture notes to lecture to lecture notes. So this is an example of the skill that it has created. So questions about the skill that it created for us. You can see that it's going to go through the testing right now. We're gonna leave this in just a moment, but now you'll be able to go through and actually assess how good of a job it did on the 6 examples that it came up with. Let's go back to what the skill looks like on disk. Here are the evals that it's creating. So it's actually putting into a large JSON file. This is the SKILL.md. This is technically the skill. That's what it looks like. It is in a special subdirectory, and the way that you share them is you zip up that subdirectory and then you share the zip file of the skill. If it had written code, it would have had code down here that would be called scripts. You can also have other things down here like references and other information as well. SKILL.md will be the first thing it loads, determines whether it needs it, and then will determine whether other things should be shared as well. It knew where to share the skill because I had a particular subdirectory loaded, indicated for Cowork. If I were doing this only in chat, it would have been just in the chat in a virtual directory, and I would have had to download it before I could get to it. So, and the skill technically is more than just the MD file. It is everything around the MD file. Everything which is in this subdirectory is the skill. So in here, it is a SKILL.md. Absolutely, that's a requirement, but it might as well have scripts underneath, references, and other things underneath. All right. So, and in terms of creating the dot skill, here's the deal with the dot skill. A dot skill is just a subdirectory zipped up and renamed dot skill. That's all that it is. It's just renamed dot skill. And as a matter of fact, yes, once it gets done writing, it will give you the option of downloading this dot skill as well. All right, folks, we're at the end of our time right now. We're going to go into office hours in just a moment, but congratulations, we have co-authored our first skill together. We're going to be creating more skills as this goes on. You're going to find that in many ways, what you might have wanted to write software before, now you can actually write skills or a series of skills to carry out the same kind of work. And Vijay, the skills, this is the evaluation that it's still in the middle of right now, where it's actually going through and testing out exactly how well it worked. It's doing timing of the skills, what the skill created, and trying to do a judgment of how good of a job it did. We'll start off with this and we'll take a look at the evaluation of how well it did on the test cases when we get together on Thursday. Thank you all so much for being here. I'm thrilled that you're here for AI with us for AI Summer. I believe Miranda and Mong are going to be around here for office hours. I have to go and give a talk, so I will not be around for that. See you all on Thursday. Thank you all. All right, I'm going to head out. I will leave this open for you all. Thank you very much. All right, I'll see you.
Is this the area for office hours?
Yep. We're just hanging out for office hours, so if you've got questions, feel free to let us know.
Thank you. Miranda, my name is Corey. I have one or two questions about where to place skills. The first is, I believe the skills should be placed in the folder where you're working, right?
They can, yeah. I mean, as long as Claude Code knows where your skills folder is, and I think it's fine. Umang, do you usually place them? I have a skills folder, and then I place it. I just tell Claude where my skills folder is.
Yeah.
Okay, you mean you have a skill folder where you place all the skills. Okay, okay, interesting. And just like Claude Cowork, does Claude Code also works on a folder, right? It works directly on the folder on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
uh, Okay, so if I have multiple tasks, maybe multiple things to do, I can create a folder within the big folder where I house all my skills, right?
sure.
And
Yeah.
for each
So
task, I point its attention to which particular skill to use, or it automatically knows the skills to use for each task.
So
so
it will know, you can point it to and it will know the skills, but what I was saying is that like I just have a skill folder outside of any of my other folders that all of my folders can access. But I think Umang was going to chime in as well.
Yeah, so skills can be placed in multiple different places depending on how you want them to be used. So as Miranda said, you can just create an overarching skills folder that has all your skills and you can point Claude Code to it every time and it will go and find those skills and use them accordingly. But the way I typically use skills is I tend to make skills that are very specific to a certain project. So for example, you might have seen on my screen, there was something called accessible housing. So it's a project where we're trying to build a repository of accessible housing solutions in the US. So I have a skill that's specifically for that project, and that skill lives in that project's folder. Now, if I had skills that are, say, like a branding guideline for making PowerPoint presentations, the typical place to like make global skills available is in your .claude folder in your computer. So in your like computers like home directory, if it's like a Mac, it's like users or Macintosh HD or whatever, there will be a .claude folder in which you can store all your skills. And those will be available to Claude anytime you talk to Claude. It will know that this is where like my global skills live and I can go there. If you have skills that are particular to a specific project, you can store them in your project folder. So your Claude's ability to access skills really depends on where it's stored and what kind of access you've given Claude to your file system. So if Claude has access to your entire file system, it can probably go search for skills anywhere. But typically, project-specific skills live in the project folder. Global skills live in your .claude folder in your like basic home directory for your computer. And we'll actually go into the details of how this progressive disclosure works on Thursday.
Okay, okay, great, great. Thank you.
I have a question on, so in that skill in the skill, it has like some coding in there. It's a common plain language and some coding.
It
Is
could.
that
It doesn't
Python?
have to have. Yeah, it doesn't have to have code. If your task requires code, then there's code in there. If there's no code required for the task, there's no code.
And is that Python in there?
Typically, yes. I think most LLMs tend to default to Python for most coding, unless it's like, for UI, it loves writing in HTML is what I've noticed. So it defaults to HTML for UIs. But yeah, typically it likes to write Python code for most things that can be done in.
Okay. Yeah, I guess I was wondering if you just could say a few of your examples of skills. I know you said the accessible housing, but I think that would help me think of skills that I would want to develop.
Yeah, so skills can really just do I like to think of skills as sort of a helper for tasks that you may consider somewhat repetitive but are complex. So, for example, the accessible housing skill, we built a skill that does a web search, but it does a very systematic web search every single time for every county that I pointed to. So I pointed to, Davidson County, Nashville, and for that, it goes through like a whole list of Google searches that it should do to put together that set of resources. So I like to make it for anything that I consider somewhat repetitive that could be done better if it had like, an instruction manual every time. So like, writing emails or like grading, that could be a good skill. Again, grading is maybe a bad example if you want to, not if FORPA is a thing, so maybe not. But there are cases where you could use it with, say, a local model. But yeah, there's any task that you think could be done in a systematic fashion again and again would be a good candidate for a skill.
Okay.
Are there any, hi, my name is Zara. Are there any skills that we can copy and paste like as a teaching faculty? Let's say these skills for teaching faculty, these are the skills for research faculty, and these are repetitive skills that we can just copy and paste and don't use our tokens because I don't have any paid subscription, and so I'm just looking at my Claude and it doesn't have anything that you guys showed. So is there anything that I can just, for example, I'm
Yeah.
interested in taking my evaluation results that we just received in the teaching and plugging it into some skill and then plugging into my PowerPoints, my PDFs, LaTeX slides, and saying, okay, now take these considerations, this feedback from students, and improve my slides or whatever, just like something like
So
that would be
yeah,
interesting for me, but something maybe simpler that it already exists and I don't have to have a
right.
subscription to use, maybe.
Yes. So I would say a skill could do half of what you said. So, yes, you can just go. So, I shared this in the chat, and I'll put this in again. Anthropic has a repository which has skills in it. You can go ahead and copy those skills, put them in your .cloud folder, and it will work just fine. Or put them in the folder where you're working out of, and it would work just fine. But the issue where it would break down for you, so skills are available to you within chat, but chat can't read your files. Chat can't update your presentation for you because that's an agent thing, right? It doesn't have the ability to like open your PowerPoint presentation file, go in, write the code for it, edit that file. It can't do that. So for that part, you would need a paid subscription where you actually have access to the agent. But in chat, say you wanted to say, just take that skill and not really make the changes, but say create a to-do list for you to make changes. That it could do because it doesn't need to like look at that folder anymore. Um, Alternatively, you could just upload your PowerPoint to the chat window and it could edit it within that like uh um chat environment, but it would likely not be as good because it doesn't have access to those skills like to the agent where you can really get in and make those changes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I think
Fair.
Vibov has had their
Yes.
hand up.
Yeah, so I had a question regarding, so most of these models, they are good at coding in Python, and we do use mostly R and Bash. So is there something like a plugin or some way you could modify it, or have you ever?
LLMs will write R code if you tell them to. So they're about as good, I would say. They default to Python when you just ask it to write code for a certain thing and you don't specify a language, it will default to Python most likely. But yeah, if you tell it R, it will write code in R.
Okay, and on Thursday we are going to build the skills, and I don't have the Claude set up properly, especially like I have a VU account, but
Okay.
I'm mostly like I'm at VUMC. So my computers are all VUMC computers, and they have a limitation that I can't install Claude or anything. Is
Right.
there a way I could um, actually participate it without uh, turning off those security measures?
You could. So Claude does have a Claude Code on the web is a thing. So if you
Uh,
do have access to that and they don't block the website, you could use
they
that.
do. I anything related to like Gemini, I can't, like, it just blocks it.
Right.
Or can I come to the data science institute, perhaps, just to maybe if there is something I can work from there?
We don't have machines at the DSI, so you won't be able to like use.
I can bring my personal laptop,
Oh.
I
but
mean,
So is it
still,
yeah, if you use your personal laptop, then VUMC can't tell you
yeah,
what to download and what not to download.
right.
But you won't be able to follow along without Claude Code, essentially. Like you could try, but you won't be following along.
so even on my personal laptop, like it has those that open like forgot the name, the login like to VPN connected. So it's always just tries to connect to that VPN.
Oh. Um,
It's very hard to kind of circumvent that. I noticed like other people have used Mac. They said they were able to access, but I'm not sure how it's done.
the other alternative I know very recently, Claude does its mobile app does have access to Claude Code now on the mobile.
Okay.
So you could theoretically follow along on a phone or an iPad, but I'm sure it's gonna be a more limited version because it's a brand new thing that they launched maybe a couple weeks ago. So I haven't really used it, but yeah, you could theoretically use Claude Code on like an iPhone. Um, Let me see if I see that option, but I'm pretty
Phone
sure.
screen is too small. Like it would be challenging, I assume.
I can use Cloud Code on my phone, which is again, it's not the ideal solution. Maybe an iPad if you have one, but
Uh-huh.
yeah, if like coming to the DSI, like our space is open, so if just getting away from the VUMC allows you to just not be connected to their VPN and that circumnavigates that thing, maybe. But yeah, the phone is only the other best option unless you want to maybe theoretically follow along and download open code, which is again like an agent-like framework, but I
Uh-huh.
block that too because you're going to have to download an LLM and run it on your computer. So then your computer needs to be able to run an LLM.
Okay, great. So if I'm just trying to figure out the requirements for the Thursday, what exactly I should have it on my computer so it goes smoothly?
So one question, sorry, I'm just jumping in.
Yes.
Are you accessing Wi-Fi from VUMC? Is that why you're asking?
Yeah, like if
Oh,
I'm at
okay.
VUMC, then it would
So
just
you're
connect. I
working
won't be
from
able to.
VUMC. Okay, that
Yeah.
was the disconnect there. Yes,
Yes,
I
yes, yes.
don't attend this from VUMC if it blocks you.
Yeah.
So yes, you can go to the DSI and access internet there, and that's fine. I was confused on the personal, but I understand what you're saying now that it's the network. I would do this course from home or from the DSI. Yeah,
At home also it tries to connect, but
just
sometimes
don't.
yeah, it does the connect like it's because anything I access for work, it wants to be connected.
Right, yeah, I would just keep this separate from work.
Yeah. Okay, great. Thanks.
Okay, sorry, go ahead. I just want to jump in there with that revelation that I understood finally. Sorry
That's
about that.
perfect. That's perfect. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, sorry. So, to summarize, I just need access to Cloud Pro, right?
Yes.
No, that's it.
Yeah, and Maxwell, who's on IT, just said on your personal device you can turn off the VPN temporarily. So maybe you
Oh,
can
great.
the IT and figure that out.
That's wonderful.
Question on Claude. So I remember like getting a message from when they rolled out like the ChatGPT EDU. They're like, don't use any other um don't use and this is like BU. They said don't use any other whatever services that we don't have enterprise agreements with.
That's
Or
probably for
BU.
certain levels of data and not. I think Maxwell's about to chime in.
Yeah, I'm sorry. So I'm not directly on that team that defines those rules, but I'm on the team securing the overall enterprise for that. The guidance for that specifically is when we were speaking in the very beginning about the data classification labels. The OpenAI GPT for EDU is only approved through those, I
Level
believe,
2.
level 1 and I believe level 2 as well.
Yeah.
So as long as you're not sending anything that is a protected university knowledge or something as part of a grant study you're part of, or anything that's the easy thing is if you're using public data or data you explicitly and only own, then you're fine to use the ChatGPT stuff. I think Claude's better, but that's just me.
Right. So my question was not about GPT, but for Claude, because it sounded like they said use GPT, but they generally seem to say like don't use anything else. But I just want to clarify. But then when I went to AI Days, you guys were like, you have to get Claude Code Pro. So
right, because we're not
confused.
we're not making recommendations on behalf of VUIT ever. We're just saying that this is what we're using. But that's why Umang talked about like data security and stuff at the very top, is because if you do have those concerns, then you are restricted in what you can use.
And I will say if you are using level 3, then you do also have access to Vanderbilt.ai Amplify. There you have access to Claude models with level 3 data privacy, which is slightly better, but you don't get the agentic framework that Claude Code gives you.
I don't want to make anyone's life harder. Some departments are reaching out to try and purchase their own Claude proxies through things like AI Bedrock. A lot of it's early days. If you're in a department that may already have one of those, then that is an option too. And there are some instructions for getting that to work within the existing Claude desktop app or VS Code. I'm not affiliated with those teams. I just know about some of the efforts.
Okay, I'm so sorry. My headphones like died just as you were like at the front end of that. So I think what I heard was just as long as we're not using level 2 data, it's okay to use any sort of like other tools or paid.
As long as you've turned off
the training.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, that's the part I didn't hear.
Yeah,
but I already was doing that anyway. Okay.
Yeah, and then some of the departments are purchasing access to the models through a way that allows for some of that level 3 compliance. I don't know exactly which ones are. I don't know the status of those projects. I just know that it is ongoing, so it may be worth asking within your department.
Okay, sounds
if
good.
you need to use level 3 data.
All right. Leo, you have a question?
Yeah. Are you aware of any other options for VUMC employees? Because since Vanderbilt and VUMC happen to be close or similar systems.
Yeah, I don't know of any. I know VUMC's been historically wildly restrictive on AI.
Okay, great. So that's still the same, and there are tools also similar. Okay, thanks.
Okay, one other question. So when I was setting up the Claude Pro CLI, I got as far as like it was asking about accessing workspace. So it says /user/ my VU ID. And then it says yes, I trust this folder. Do I hit that and then it'll create that .claude, or do I need to set up a separate space?
It will set up that .claude in that space, yes.
And it sounded like that was the recommended sort of way to go about it.
That's totally fine, yeah.
And that will serve as the more like universal space for it to
so
work.
the .claude folder that it will create in your /home/VUnit ID directory is going to be where, all those global skills will live.
The global skills, right.
But yeah, generally like best practice, I always point it to a specific directory within that and do work out of there. Just I personally haven't had much use for global skills because everything I do is like distinctly different enough
to a project.
Like a skill is very focused on a specific project. So yeah. But yeah, saying yes there would be just fine.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. Have a great day. See you on Thursday.
Thanks. See ya. Thanks for chiming in, Maxwell.
Oh, thank you. I'm sorry. I realized I'm the last one here. I was multitasking, trying to work. Hey, thank you guys so much. Also, not trying to steal anyone's thunder if you guys want me to.
I love hearing. Yeah, it's really helpful.
Okay. Yeah. This is I'm not going to say the most organized, rapid rollout of many different AI technologies, but yeah, is interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. Definitely plan to chime in more if you guys need it.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to move on to my next thing. Thank you.
Bye. All right.
All right.
Cool.
Woo! Success. Great job.
Thank you.
All
I
right.
guess see you whenever.
See you. Yeah. See you Thursday. Unless I see you before then.